Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. The last day of presentations at the Gourmand Awards and the Cascai World Food Summit. And we are very happy to begin with Singapore, Nusantara, the food from the Singapore Malays by Khir Johari. You know, it was named Best Book in the World by the Gourmand Awards. And I think you'll understand why for those of you who do not know the book. Thank you so much, Khir, for your amazing work to connect all the people with somebody related to Malay culture, all the way to the huge archipelago from Singapore going through Indonesia, way up to the Philippines. Thank you so much, Khir.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for joining me. Today I want to talk about, there are two things I want to share. One is a PowerPoint slide. I hope I can do that in 4 minutes, which means I have 8 seconds per slide. And the next one would be a short video clip. That's 6 minutes. So this is my topic, flavors of Nusantara. So I thought it's good to start by defining what is Nusantara. It comes from 2 words, Nusa and Antara. Nusa, like the ancient Greek word for island, that's Nessos, Nusa, island. Antara means in between. So Nusantara is the islands in between. It is indeed the indigenous name for the Malay archipelago, which today comprises of three countries and more. We have Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia, and Brunei as well, and part of southern Thailand. And not to forget, the northern extension of the Malay world, that is the Philippines. We heard quite a bit from our friend Glenn Garcia on the Philippines. Let's take a look at this. So this is the archipelago. This is the world's largest archipelago. It stretches a distance of from London, not to Moscow, but beyond Moscow to Baku in Azerbaijan. That's how wide it is. What's really interesting is the positioning. This is almost like the other Mediterranean. Up north, we have China, a great civilization. To the west, we have the Indian subcontinent. And then with time, we see the arrival of people from the Near East and the Middle East. And by the 15th century, there was this search for spice, because this was indeed the cradle of spices. So it triggered the whole movement of people from Europe to this part of the world. So this is a wonderful book. I like how this book demarcates into the flora of the Malay world. This is produced in Den Haag in Holland. In the 1940s, it says Flora Malaysiana. So you get an idea of the area that it covers, because the flora and fauna definitely shapes and molds what we have on our table. So today I'm going to talk about commonalities. Well, the title of my book is The Food of Singapore Malays. The subtitle is Gastronomic Travels Through the Archipelago. So I'm using Singapore as a vantage point to look across the region and trying to understand why do we eat what we eat. So this is, whenever I look at this, I see some handbags, sort of inspired by this. Look at all this ketupat. These are casings for you to make compacted rice, needed when you traverse. Imagine before the age of steamship, you move from island to island. So you can sustain yourself with compacted rice. But compacted rice is also used for offerings to ancestors, to use to propitiate spirits. And also there is a common sort of culture, common technique culture here. So speaking of the flora and fauna earlier, look at this. These are things that's endemic to the region. So we have jackfruit and we have this belimbing here. And like all things, right, good things travel, food travels, whether it's making its way from South America to my part of the world or vice versa. So we see this sort of reverse cultural transmission. Again, commonality across the region. This has always been regarded as the king of fruits. An accordion of ota ota. Ota means brain. Ota ota, that which looks like brain. It's a fish mousse. The beautiful part of this story is this. Well, there is a common European culture. There is a common Southeast Asian culture. So in Cambodia, in Laos, in Thailand, of course, in island Southeast Asia, you will see this fish mousse. Now, we heard from friends yesterday, people talk about, Dr. Ong talk about Malacca, that Portuguese enclave, Portuguese colony. We've heard from Datin Kalsum, who spoke about Malacca. Now, this is a very interesting discovery, this stele from 7th century. It's a stele to commemorate the opening of a royal orchard garden from Sumatra. But the Prince of Sumatra Sumatra is Indonesia today, traveled to Singapore and established the Kingdom of Singapore. When Singapore was attacked by the Javanese powers, the rulers made his way to Malacca and established Malacca. So while today you see Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia as different modern-day states, but we are all connected. This is a translation of what was inscribed on the stone. And when you're reading this, this is a king who wants to dedicate his garden for his people. I see the big four. The big fours are, these are the big fours. And the best part about the big fours is that it is still being consumed today. From 7th century, today 2025, these remained sort of the staples of the region. Now, over the last few days, we've heard the transformative power of Gourmand. This is what Gourmand has done for the book. This is in Omea, where it won the book of the year. But what happens after that? So the book just last October was recognized by the National University of Singapore as a history book of the year. Actually, it's triennial, so once every 3 years. This is the first time in the history of the NUS History Prize that a book on food received the award. So I thought it's really important to say, like Escoffier, Escoffier has done quite a bit on in codifying French food. But I thought I want to start by, let's take a look at classification of food. No one has done it. So we enjoy all these sweet and dainties, but is there a way that we could classify them? So I did a bit of research. I traveled throughout the region and decided it's just too many. So I got an illustrator to work on this. That's the story of the flavors that launched 1,000 sheeps, right? Whether the arrival of the Spanish in the galleon, whether the arrival of the Portuguese, they were the first one from Europe to arrive, but they were in search of this. It's another way of depicting the spices that has been ground and wet as opposed to dried spices. But you see, the way we look at food is not just for enjoying and consumption. We also see food as a source of medicine. Food, for its medicinal efficacy and potency. And now, across the region, there's something else. I mean, we hear wonderful stories about Noma, but I felt there was a need to peel the layers and share with the younger generation a forgotten practice of the region, that's foraging. We have the common, accoutrements here, and this now has become fashionable. When at one time, this is something that you could, is easily accessible. And Singapore, with all the urban redevelopment, we've lost the coastal lines, and we lost all of this. But today, sea grapes is making its way to Michelin-star restaurants. And sea urchin is always associated with, let's say, Hokkaido. But when in fact, in the waters of Southeast Asia, we have this aplenty. Again, a common way of how do you preserve before the advent of technology, the advent of modern technology and refrigeration. Fish, you could dry it, you could steam it, and you turn it into crackers. What do you do when you have a surplus? This is wonderful because I like this picture. It reminds me of the lowest glycemic index sugar. Palm sugar is so delicious. It's imagine caramelizing with a bit of sort of smoky, flavors. Now, the story of food in the Malay world, in the Malay archipelago, is also a story of cross-pollination. I spent the first few days here to get acclimatized. I was in Porto, and I started talking to people at cafes and shops and restaurants. Lo and behold, the Malay word for butter, that's mantega, the Malay word for cheese, keju, the Malay word for cake, bolu, all came from Portuguese. And likewise, the Portuguese took from the Malay world limau for citruses and bubur for porridge. So we heard yesterday from Christian the story of fermentation. This has been around for a long time, and this is ubiquitous throughout the region. Fermentation of tempeh. Again, something that we celebrate throughout the countries. Now, getting recognition from Gourmand, is a great thing. It's one thing, but I had this wonderful sort of moment when I had a conversation with Mr. Quantro over the phone, and what happens after the book, right? What impact can it make? It's great to have this recognition, but recognition comes with responsibility. Where can I take this book next? Well, the book has legs now. So I decided to do a trans-regional conversation seminar, and it's called Serumpun. Serumpun means one cluster, meaning same root, you can have many branches. And I felt there was really a need to have post-national cuisine conversation. We don't need to have food wars between Malaysia and Indonesia, between Singapore and Malaysia. I mean, to me, it's silly and it's futile. I think we need to sit down to talk about interconnectedness, to talk about shared heritage. And that was the goal of Serumpun. So I invited Gen Z influencers, academics, journalists, practitioners, chefs. Let's get together and have it and celebrate our common food. And it's called Serumpun. So after this slide, I'm going to show you what I did with Serumpun. Over the last few years, the market has seen many books on sambal, as if this is the one thing that unites us all. If you have 90 villages in one region of Sumatra, expect to have 90 different sambals, but they have a common denominator though. See what you can do with sambal. I mean, this is a traditional food, but I thought, what can we do, right, to give a sort of a modern way of plating? Again, this is Singapore recently managed to get hawker culture to be part of the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. But I feel that it should have been a joint submission, just like what Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria did with couscous. It was a joint submission. If we had done a joint submission for this, for hawker culture, that would be wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, if we want to see evidence of Gourmand being an agent of change, here's one evidence. Here's one of them. Please, video. Thank you very much. Let's take a look at Serumpun as a result. How it motivated me to want to put this together. Please, thank you very much. Could I have the clip?
Welcome to the inaugural Serumpun Tasting Tradition Telling Tale Symposium.
What gathers us all here today, from near and far, is what I believe the word Serumpun signifies. A common bond, a shared history, an intimate connection that goes beyond race, ethnicity, nationality, and language.
It's not just about eating, it's not just about, I think, sharing recipes. Also part of that heritage is the artistic and the scientific contributions that local Malays and others were making as well. I think this is a history that's often overlooked or forgotten, and it's very important for us to bring that back.
Seikat bagai siri, serumpun bagai serai. We need to remember this. This plant represents our serumpun spirit.
Cookbooks are repositories of culinary knowledge. They tell the culture of a certain time, the availability of ingredients, what was trending at that time.
When you actually respect the origin stories of these dishes and the traditions that you study, that you're actually telling your story. The aim really when you make these foods is that people from all over the world sit down in your restaurant, eat and say, oh, this reminds me of my grandmother.
Oh my goodness, the makanan Minang, yeah, I feel that it's cooked with love.
The teh tarik was fantastic. The kuih sedap, sedap, sedap. Makanannya semua sedap.
Expansions of fast food industry, we need to preserve our environment, to preserve our common food culture.
Ulam is a range of herbs, shoots, anything that's got regenerative or medicinal value. So I think previously there were over 1,000 different kinds in Malaysia, but that number has dwindled.
I think the dry braise is also something that's quite unique to us, right? Most cultures, you braise something and you want the gravy, but whereas with rendang, for instance, you're braising to the point that there's no more moisture.
Comfort food, for me, it's something that reminds me of home. It's like a mother's hug, you know. It's more into the emotional side other than the flavor profile itself.
Every single day, I was like, I need laksa. And I actually dreamt a water dispenser that would just dispense laksa gravy. That was my dream.
What is, I think, extremely important to remember is that sensory information that we have connects to actual social events. Our sensory feelings are so incredibly powerful that they're evocative. And I have another reference that I like very much, and this is in the cartoon film Ratatouille. This terrible critic who is being so mean to the cook. He gets his dish of ratatouille, this simple French dish with eggplants, and he has one bite, and all of a sudden, oh, he's back in his mother's kitchen.
There is also one sambal which is very interesting that I found in the island of Timor. So it's called sambal luat, and it's basically a fermented sambal, and can last for a year even, and the taste is very, very funky. It's because it's fermented, right? You have that fermented funky taste, and then the sourness is present as well. The spiciness doesn't go off even after 1 year of leaving it inside a bamboo tube.
Turbot is like the salmon, so it's from the seawater. So when it's breeding, it will go upriver to freshwater river. During the low season, that's when you do the ritual. This is called sema, in the hope that you have a good harvest. You know, you're calling the fish, telling them, please, you're welcome, come, and then they'll make their way upriver, so that, you know, hopefully they will get lots of roe.
And when Sema Trubuk, Bomo, also the Bidu is the person who tried to translate what the Bomo said. There are 16 ghosts in the Malacca Strait, and the king of the ghosts is Hantu Trubuk.
The cuisine of a community is what the entire community makes. I'm sure we all have that one relative who insists that their way or the highway. That's not how cuisine works. That's not how anthropology works. A culture is created in community and in the context of a community and includes that whole community. There's no right, there's no wrong, there's just what all the community does together.
I think there's definitely a much higher interest in Nusantara cuisine as a whole now. And at the same time, you have chefs like Hafiz who are really championing the cuisine through fine dining as well.
I do believe this is only the tip of the iceberg. This is only the beginning of something great to come, because it's not going to be only chefs and restaurants, but perhaps more food historians, more culinary intellectuals, writers. There's more and more writing and documenting about the uniqueness of Nusantara culinary regions.
Farmers and then, permaculture movement, in supporting this, we create better future carve out for us in terms of chef to play around with local indigenous ingredients.
I truly believe that the Nusantara region is going to be the next big dining scene in the world, actually. I don't see any other reason why we won't be the next big thing, because we have so much and the diversity is immense. So yeah, we should be the next big dining scene.
I think we should be as interested and invested in this. Otherwise, might not get an opportunity to talk with different generations about food and cooking, because otherwise we're going to lose all of this.
I am grateful we are able to put Serumpun, tasting tradition, telling tales together, the inaugural food symposium of Dialogues by Khir. It's just so wonderful we are able to share the thoughts and ideas about shared history, interconnectedness and cross-pollination within the region. And we look forward to Nusantara cuisine being the next big thing in world gastronomy. Thank you very much. That was really lovely to see friends from Indonesia, Malaysia, and we have a professor from the US to join us. So I'm looking forward to Serumpun 2.0 this coming October. So you're very welcome to Singapore to join us. I feel that in a world, in a fragmented world, that we live in now, that's full of uncertainty. Food is such a great unifying force. The world desperately needs some form of commonality, and we see that commonality in food. Thank you very much, Mr. Quantro. Thank you, and happy birthday, Gourmand 30th anniversary. Thank you.